Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Live from the State Capitol. I'm Peter Peritzman, Chief Communications Officer for the New Jersey Business and Industry Association. With us today are Vice President of Government Affairs Frank Robinson and Vice President of Taxation and Economic Development Andrew Musick, who will be talking about the 2018 fiscal year budget introduced a week ago by Governor Christie. A few housekeeping matters before we begin. Today's webinar is being recorded and will be emailed to you tomorrow along with the slides for today's presentation, so be on the lookout for those. If you'd prefer to download them now, please see the PowerPoint link in the Handouts tab of your GoToWebinar panel. Above it, you may also notice the Questions tab. Frank and Andrew would be happy to take all of your questions, so don't hesitate to write them in as they come to you. So now, let's get things started. Frank?
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us and live from the state capitol. As you know, we do this most months of the year to bring you up to date on items that affect the business community here in the capital city. Very pleased that Andrew Musick, who is our newest Vice President of BIA, is staying on top of the budget for all of us, and he recently became Vice President after being here for 5 years with NJBIA and does a great job representing businesses like yours. So without further ado, Andrew, it's all yours.
Thank you, Frank. On Tuesday, February 28th, Governor Christie introduced his $35.5 billion fiscal year 2018 budget. In terms of revenues, revenue growth is expected to be approximately 3.6% or just over $1.2 billion. This includes 3.6% growth in gross income tax revenues, 1.7% growth in sales tax revenues, and 5% growth in corporate business tax revenues. The governor's proposed budget includes the continuation of a number of positive tax cuts and reforms for New Jersey businesses of all sizes. Some of these reforms were passed in 2012 and are now fully phased in and remain unchanged, and they total over $3 billion in savings since 2012. The single sales factor reform provides tax relief to larger corporate taxpayers which choose to call New Jersey home, and these are the companies that invest in our state with both facilities and jobs. Reforms like the income loss netting and net operating loss carry forward and reduced minimum tax on S corporations provide much needed tax relief to the small and medium-sized businesses in our state. These are your LLCs, your LLPs, your S corporations, and your sole proprietorships. Additionally, the FY 2018 budget includes the bipartisan tax reforms that were passed by the governor and the legislature this past October. These reforms help to address New Jersey's tax climate while providing substantial investment in the state's infrastructure through an increase in the state's gas tax. These reforms included a full elimination of the estate tax by January 1st of 2018, a 5-fold increase in the income tax exclusion for pension and retirement income over 4 years, a reduction in the state sales tax, an increase in the earned income tax credit, and a $3,000 income tax deduction for veterans. The governor's budget proposal includes a $2 billion state transportation capital program. This will amount to a $16 billion transportation trust fund plan over the next 8 years, with 100% of gas tax revenues constitutionally dedicated to repair and replace New Jersey roads and bridges. During his remarks, the governor also called for a $400 million supplemental appropriation in the current fiscal year, and that's fiscal year 2017, to address bridge deficiencies and road repairs. He noted that these funds are projected to be spent quickly over the next 100 days, and in fact, the Senate Budget and Appropriations Committee is scheduled to vote on this bill tomorrow. While much of the discussion leading up to the budget address focused on school funding, the governor did not propose any change in the school funding formula. Rather, school funding remains essentially flat, as the proposed budget includes spending more than $13.8 billion on education, an increase of $523 million from fiscal year 2017. The governor also challenged the legislature, and specifically legislative leadership, to work together with him over the next 100 days to come up with a new school funding formula. The governor added that if school funding was not fixed in the next 100 days, it would be fixed before he completes his term as governor. Significant reforms that were championed by NJBIA, along with vigorous monitoring and the implementation of anti-fraud measures by the New Jersey Department of Labor and Workforce Development, have saved taxpayers more than $915 million in improper spending from the Unemployment Insurance Trust Fund. This responsible oversight has restored the solvency of the trust fund, which stands now at a positive balance of more than $1.9 billion. And as a result of this positive balance being reached well ahead of schedule, annual incremental tax rate reductions have occurred, and these are going to save employers more than $1 billion over the next 5 years. The governor's fiscal year 2018 budget also includes a $2.5 billion public employee pension payment, which brings total contributions of the Christie administration to $8.8 billion. Additionally, the governor proposed contributing revenues from the state lottery to eligible pension plans. The governor stated that this transfer of assets has the potential to reduce the unfunded liability and increase stability in New Jersey's state pension system. The FY 2018 budget assumes $125 million in savings from public employee and retiree health care costs through a combination of new reforms. These reforms include the implementation of changes to help contain out-of-network costs, and that the School Employees Health Benefits Program Plan Design Committee will adopt the same controls that were adopted by the State Health Benefits Program last year. These reforms are projected to reduce local employer and employee costs by an additional $37 million and would additionally save local governments, school districts, and property taxpayers approximately $127 million. The governor's budget reduces charity care payments to hospitals by $50 million and increases funding for graduate medical education by $30 million. The governor's fiscal year 2018 budget anticipates that the decrease in charity care will be offset by insurance payments that hospitals will receive on behalf of residents who now have health care coverage through the expanded NJ Family Care Program or the federal marketplace. The FY 2018 budget proposal maintains higher education funding at a total of $2.2 billion, while funding for tuition aid grants will see an increase of $15.7 million over fiscal year 2017.
I'd like to remind all of you to please ask your questions if there's anything you want to know about the budget. Andrew is our budget expert here at NJBIA, and he would be happy to answer all of your questions, as would Frank, or any other related questions or issues that you'd like to ask about. Please feel free. We do have a couple questions to follow up on Andrew's presentation. First of all, if you could talk a little bit about the process. So basically, what happens next? The governor's given his speech. The budget is in the hands of the legislature. Hearings have been scheduled. What happens next?
Sure. In terms of the process, at the end of this month, the legislature will go on their annual budget break. During this time, both the Senate and the Assembly budget committees, they take public testimony on the budget. NJBIA is scheduled to testify on March 21st and March 22nd. The committees will also hear from the various commissioners who will come in to discuss their specific departmental budgets, and then this will include 2 revenue updates from both OLS and the Department of Treasury, and the way that those are done, they take place at the beginning of April and then again in mid-May. The legislature will then come back into session in May or early June, and the budget negotiations will continue. The fiscal year 2018 budget must be passed by the state legislature and signed into law by the governor by July 1st of 2017. Just keep in mind that the governor cannot add anything to the budget if there's one presented by the state legislature, but that he may remove certain portions of the legislature's budget. And I just would like to remind you that we will also be hosting a budget webinar on July 12th, which will look at the final conclusion of the fiscal year 2018 budget. So I hope you'll be able to join us for that as well.
If I may interject, this is Frank speaking. A lot of people look for lots of drama and ask us the question about will the budget be done in time, which is legislature passes, as Andrew said, by the end of June, and the governor needs to sign by July 1st. In recent history, the state has only missed that deadline once, and that was for the FY 2007 budget, roughly 10 years ago. when Governor Corzine and the democratically controlled legislature could not come to an agreement on the budget, and so we were a week late at that point in time, and all state funding of various programs was frozen for a week. But that's the last time we had a real contentious budget, and we are sure that the governor and the legislature will work together this year to get it done on time.
Thanks, Frank. And also, this is Governor Christie's final budget, so this is his last budget message and also the last budget he's going to be or will be presenting to the legislature. Andrew, if you could talk a little bit about our position on the budget. I mean, there's obviously a lot of stuff in there. It's more than $35 billion. You can't agree with everything, but is there a kind of a general overview of where we are on the budget and some of the things maybe you're going to be talking to in front of the committees when you testify?
Yeah, we feel that it's a responsible budget, and that it will help to support both economic and job growth. And we think it's a budget that meets New Jersey's obligations to schools, to property taxpayers, to the public employee pension system, as well as municipalities. And it's able to do that while holding the line on spending. And, you know, New Jersey's made tremendous strides over the past 8 years, and this budget will help to keep the economy on the right track.
Okay, Andrew, we have a question from Fred Brody, and I saw a piece on this morning, so I'm not sure what information we have about it, but let's fire away. Will funds be taken out of the Clean Energy Program, which has happened in the past?
Well, thank you for that question, Fred. We are not sure. There has been lots of movement to occasionally steal funds, as people like to say, from various parts of the budget. The governor did say in his address, this budget will in fact have about 2% of the funding from non-recurring revenue. That's a big drop from previous administrations and legislature, but exactly how much is going to come out, ultimately we don't know. That is one of the areas that the governor and the legislature wrestle with a little bit, and we, like most people, like to have funds spent on their intended purpose, and we will be watching that.
One more question. This is from Lawrence Epstein, and whichever one of you would like to answer this, please feel free. While cutting costs on the health benefit, I'm trying to make my way through this, while cutting costs on the health benefit side impacts positively statewide on tax reductions, does the impact on healthcare providers and lower revenue have concern? Are we concerned about that?
We're always concerned about any cuts that will affect various programs, and the whole issue of what's going to happen not only in New Jersey but nationwide regarding health benefits and the whole future of health insurance, as we see the debates going on now in Washington. And we do have concerns upon that and anything else that affects the employers of the state who pay the lion's share of A, health insurance premiums, and B, taxes. A lot of people don't realize that roughly 40% of the property taxes in the state of New Jersey are paid for by businesses. So it's one of the reasons why our association, representing our 20,000 members, is always keeping an eye on that. We've commended the legislature and the governor in the past for putting a cap on property taxes. We know we spend a lot of money on education, which we believe New Jersey should, but there are a lot of different elements to that funding, including the cost of insurance for public employees. So it's something we'll keep a close eye on.
You know, and Frank, certainly our members in our surveys, and the Business Outlook survey in particular, have told us that health benefits and the cost of health benefits are their #1 concern, and that continues to be a concern. And obviously, you know, we all read every day what's happening in Washington. We are certainly keeping an eye on whatever the discussions are regarding the Affordable Care Act and whatever changes may go into effect that could impact New Jersey in particular. I would guess Medicaid funding is a big one.
Well, it is. things that we haven't talked about is that the state of New Jersey budget, when Andrew outlined its $35 billion budget, is actually tens of billions of dollars more than that, because we get a lot of aid from the federal government, as most states do. Some people complain that New Jersey doesn't get its fair share money back from Washington, and that's a debate for another day. But right now, a lot of the money that we're getting has been coming through the Medicaid money into our family care program. Governor Christie, we believe, wisely took that money when the Affordable Care Act went into effect and the states had a choice. New Jersey was one of those states that did in fact take that money, which has been able to help us get more people insured, also has been allowed us not to have to spend as much money in charity care, as Andrew talked about. At one point in time, we were spending almost $700 million a year in charity care, and as Andrew said, that's dropped down to about $250 million in the upcoming year. The fact that there's been lots of discussion in Washington about cutting certain kinds of federal aid, especially in some new version of the Affordable Care Act, is of great concern for us, because while the budget that we will pass technically is the $35 billion supported by state revenues, whether that's income tax, corporate business tax, sales tax, a number of other different types of taxes, the $20 billion from the federal government. If that is lessened, that could blow a hole in the programs that we provide for the people of New Jersey.
And I just wanted to make note, Frank, since you were talking a little bit about federal issues, we do have a federal affairs issue network that would encourage everyone to sign up for if they're interested in just in the understanding of what might be happening in Washington as the number of changes take place. And you can access or sign up for that federal affairs issue network by logging onto our website at njbia.org. I would encourage everyone to check that out.
And I also would encourage people to sign up for Andrew's issue network, which is on taxation and economic development, and he gives members of that committee periodic updates on what's happening with the state budget. We also include a lot of that information in our daily New Jersey Business Today that we urge you to subscribe to. That comes out 6 days a week at approximately 4 p.m. We do have our communications staff take Sunday off, and we will include a lot of information regarding the upcoming interesting discussion on the state budget on a frequent basis.
Thank you, Frank and Andrew, and that's about all the time we have today, so unfortunately we will have to bring things to a close. A couple of reminders. Don't forget, all of you will be receiving a recording of today's webinar via email, and you'll be getting the PowerPoint presentation via email as well. Lastly, when you close out of the webinar, a survey will come up on your screen that we hope you'll fill out so we can understand how best to provide you important information in the future in a webinar format. Our next webinar, Doing Business, LLP Inc. or LP, will take place on March 29th and focus on critical decisions in classifying your business many don't even think about when starting up. I'd like to thank our producer, Vinny Civitillo, who's a huge part of our webinar team, for pulling this all together. So again, for Frank Robinson and Andrew Musick, this is Peter Peritzman, thanking you for being with us this morning and wishing you a good day.